So I've been to basically every theme park on the East Coast, aside from like Dollywood, if that even counts as the East Coast. But one big park that I've been missing, the biggest park that I've been missing, is Dorney. And the reason being is that I tend to travel during the spring and the fall, just based on where I am. Um, and Dorney has a really short season. They're basically only open for the summer and like a week of the fall. So I've never really gotten the chance to come down. But this year, I'm closer to a transit center for the summer, so I actually have the chance to go places. And I have a date down in Allentown. So it's one of those things where like I probably wasn't gonna travel 6 hours for a date. And I also wasn't super jazzed to travel 6 hours for a park like Dorney that doesn't, in my mind wasn't a super important park to get to. Um, but having both was like, okay, that's a good enough reason to go down. There's someone I want to see, and I have a park to get to down there. So I booked my ticket and I started planning to get down. And as I was booking my ticket, I realized that my bus would leave me with about a 4 hour layover in Newark, New Jersey. So I started looking up, like, oh, what am I going to do with my 4 hours? And then I remembered that there's a lot of theme parks in New Jersey. So I was like, well, I wonder if I'm near the Jersey Shore or the American Dream Mall or something. And I looked it up, and it turns out that my bus stop was maybe 30 minutes away from American Dream Mall via Uber. So I'm like, oh shit, I can knock out two birds. I can knock out three birds with one stone with this trip, and I can hit up Nickelodeon Universe and try to get the credits. So I was skeptical about starting that route because I hear everything is down constantly at Nick Universe, and I was thinking like, do I want to pay $160 for half the park to be down, or even if like missing Shredder or Sandy's or Shellraiser, like I don't know if that's worth it. But I'm like, you know what? I'll make the decision once I get there. I'll see if the website is posting anything down for temporary maintenance or like scheduled maintenance. And yeah, so the day comes. I take the bus at like 6 a.m., get to Newark at like 1 p.m. And I'm looking at the website. There's no posted closures at the Nickelodeon universe. So I'm like, you know what? Yeah, screw it. I'm not happy about spending $120, but like, might as well go check it out. So I get there, Uber takes about 20 minutes, and yeah, it's so cool just walking up to the American Dream Mall, turning the corner in just a pretty regular looking mall, and then there's a giant theme park with like crazy roller coasters, and all just inside. It's such a strange vibe. It's such a strange place, but it's really cool. At least, initially the wow factor is really there. So I enter the park, I get my ticket, and interesting thing they do at this park is there's like no ticket attendance anywhere. You just scan your phone at a machine and it prints out a wristband for you. I buy a locker, set my bag in there because I'm traveling with my backpack, and I get on some rides. So as I'm looking around, everything except Timmy's is open. So Shellraiser and Sandy's are both open, both running, and then everything else is running too. And I'm thinking like, how lucky am I? Like some people have been to this park 4 times and they haven't even gotten every credit. Um, you'll see later on in the story that I kind of used up all of my luck in that moment. But, I get on, I go straight to Sandy's because I know it's the most temperamental. Get on Sandy's. That ride is great. Oh my gosh, it's so good. Forward launch is kind of whatever, kind of, reminds me of like Intamin's take on a skyrocket, but definitely better than a skyrocket. The restraints are more comfy, the launch is a bit punchier, and the forces are a little bit more, and the pacing is a little bit more properly executed. But then you get to the backwards launch where the turntable spins you around, and then you're going the same direction. Like you're still launching the same way that you launched the first time, but your train is flipped around now, which is not how I thought the turntable worked. I thought you just went through the layout backwards and launched in the other direction. But no, you're launching the same direction, you're just flipped backwards. And that backwards launch was insane. I don't know what they have to do to like get you up to speed on that ride, but like you are just ripped backwards, and it's from zero too, so it's not even like the Pantheon Top Thrill 2 swing launch. It's just you're fucking going, and and then that's pretty much it. The inversions are fun, like whatever. And then I get off that ride, I go straight to Shellraiser because that's the other one that I really want to get, and these are the two that I'd be like devastated if I missed. So I get on Shellraiser, um, and it's a really interesting ride. The launch is really good, like shockingly good, and then it's some kind of fun inversions, maybe a little bit meandering. I would have appreciated a little bit more airtime, or just variety in the first half. But it's a fun kind of pre-lift section, almost an entire half of the coaster, so like that's cool. Then you get to the vertical lift and you get up to the top, and at this point I've ridden a fair few Eurofighters, a bunch of stuff with vertical lift hills, and a couple dive coasters, so I know the feeling of dangling over a drop like that. But this ride does a really cool thing where you crest the top and then you just slowly roll over it as if you're just going to go straight into the drop like it's a traditional Eurofighter. And you coast a little bit and then you're braked. And then it holds you there in this like ceiling extension looking out over the skyline of the city. And that was the most terrified I've been on a roller coaster since like last year sitting on the launch track for Top Thrill 2. And before that, like, I can't even remember the last time I was scared. So I was kind of, it was a nervous excitement. Like, oh my God, I'm about to experience the steepest drop in the world by 0.5 degrees. And just looking out over the skyline, being inside of a mall, it's a really just one of a kind roller coaster experience. And then it drops you, and then I honestly couldn't tell you what happens after that point. I know there's like a little twisted airtime hill that gives a little bit of flowjector towards the end, and there's some inversions. There's a really awful pothole after that drop. Like, I don't know, it might be like an inversion after that drop, and didn't appreciate that. But yeah, aside from that, Shellraiser, it's pretty rough, honestly. I don't know how it's so rough, being like indoors, but maybe it's something to do with operating year round and having, being a maintenance nightmare that made it like that. But it's definitely worth it for the launch and the drop off the lift hill. So Shellraiser was really good. I've definitely enjoyed Shellraiser. But I did like Sandy's quite a bit more. Then I saw that Timmy's opened back up. So I went over and I did Timmy's. And that was really fun. That was my first Intamin half pipe, unless you want to count like Georgia Gold Rusher. But my first like regular Intamin half pipe. And that was super fun. I can say now that Georgia Gold Rusher needs to get its train spinning because it makes so much of a difference. I really didn't think it did, but approaching the elements at a different angle every time, going like sideways, diagonal into these spikes, getting weird like horizontal airtime. Yeah, Timmy's is really fun. I enjoyed that ride a lot more than I was expecting to. Then I got on Shredder and Slime Streak, and I'm gonna kind of condense this segment because I don't have a lot to say about either of them. Both of them were first times for me, as was actually every ride at this park. This was my first of that. I think it's a Zero Slime Streak, first of that model, and then it was also my first Grosslauer spinner with Shredder. And I rode Shredder in an empty train, so I don't know if that had something to do with it. And I was feeling pretty nauseous, so like I wasn't necessarily in the mood for a spinning ride, especially after Shellraiser kind of beat me up. But for most of Shredder, I was just feeling like a little bit nauseous and also not particularly impressed by the ride or its forces. It didn't so much feel like we were spinning, but more so we were just kind of tilting a little bit throughout the layout. I don't know what it is about it. I actually like Wild Mouse at Cedar Point a fair bit more. So that was Shredder, and then Slime Streak was actually pretty fun for what I expected. It's kind of short, but like, you're not going to necessarily have a sprawling layout in this mall, and that's kind of a problem with all the rides here, aside from Shellraiser. Like, Shellraiser's got some pretty good length to it. But Slime Streak, for what it is really fun. I had heard it described as like almost more of a monorail in terms of forces, but like no, that thing genuinely has some airtime. Um, the seats are like a little bit uncomfortable, but as far as older family coasters go, it's certainly not the worst in that regard. And it's nice kind of just cruising around all the rides, getting an aerial view of the park. So yeah, with that, I went back on Shellraiser and got my front row ride since my first ride was in the back. And then that was pretty much all the time I had for them all, so I had to get going. Um, Thinking that it would be about a 20-minute Uber back to the airport because, well, not the airport, the bus station, because it had been about a 20-minute Uber ride there. So I get my stuff, I head out of the mall, and I start making my way back to the Uber drop-off spot. And the Uber is kind of running late. It's his first time going to the mall, so he was kind of getting stuck trying to find me in the parking lot because it is a pretty big parking lot in that mall. And it's kind of mazy. So he eventually found me, picked me up, and at this point I check Google Maps for to estimate how long it's going to be to get me back to the train station. And oh my god, it's a 40-minute train ride, or it's a 40-minute drive. I'm like, what the hell? It was 20 minutes earlier. And then I realize, oh fuck, it's rush hour in New Jersey. So yeah, that doubled the trip length. Now has me arriving at the bus station like 5 minutes after my bus is scheduled to leave. And compounding that, the Uber driver was late and had a hard time finding me. So that was maybe like, I'm 10 minutes late at this point. So I'm thinking like, maybe the bus is gonna stick around for a little bit. I'm kind of coping at this point. I'm like, but by the time, 20 minutes later, we're still not even halfway there. It ended up being more like a 50-minute drive. And I'm like, okay, there's no way. Like, at this point, this is when the bus is scheduled to leave at about this time. And I'm not even halfway there. So I'm looking and I'm like, well, what am I going to do? I still need to get to Allentown. So I'm looking, and I see that there is one bus to Allentown later that night. And luckily, it's only a $20 bus, so, like, it's really not that bad for being such a last-minute, terrible situation. So I'm like, okay, well, if I miss it, at least I've got this backup plan. And yeah, lo and behold, I end up missing it. The bus leaves right on time, and I'm kind of stranded. So I book my ticket. Then I just go and hang out in the New Jersey Transit Center for a bit. Well, and I say for a bit, I mean like 5 hours. So there's no chargers in here. I have my phone and my 3DS, and my phone is on like 40%. My 3DS is on maybe 75. So I kind of just power off my phone, try to conserve the battery as much as possible so that I'm not dead by the time my bus arrives, in case I need it to scan in the ticket. And I just kind of play my 3DS and try to avoid making eye contact with the tweakers. But then, my bus arrives. I get like my late night bus to Allentown. I end up missing the first activity I had planned with my date, which was to get lunch that night, or to get like dinner that night. And I end up pulling up to my motel at midnight, maybe a little bit later. But ultimately, I still make it to Allentown. Plans are still on for Dorney the next day, and then, I got more activities planned with my date on Saturday. So before we get to Dorney, I just wanted to recap a little bit of my thoughts on Nick Universe. So first impressions, of course, it's insane seeing giant coasters in a mall like that. It's just from a pure spectacle standpoint, it's one of the coolest reveals of a park I've ever seen. Practicality, it's like fine. It's close enough to Newark. It'd be cool if there was public transit that didn't take like 4 hours to get to, especially when the drive is like 20 minutes. But that's that's the MetLife Stadium and the American Dream Mall for you. In terms of my impression after I spent the time there, I would say nearly all of their coasters are too rough and too short. Aside from the Intamins that are glass smooth. But it's a park that made me more nauseous than a lot of theme parks tend to, and like there's compounding reasons on top of that, the stress of travel and trying to make it back to the bus station and all that. But I was more nauseous here than I am at like most theme parks. And I think it's a combination of the intensity and then maybe the lack of open air could be a part of it too. I don't know, it's just a theory. But the intensity, the roughness, and then yeah. They have a pretty solid coaster collection, although, they are mostly pretty short. Like, what are you going to do? It's a mall. Even the fact that they were able to fit as much as they did into that mall is crazy. The other Mall of America location definitely has better vibes. Like, it has trees and theming and stuff, and this one is pretty much just rides on flat plots of land. I do appreciate the Nickelodeon theming. There was a lot of character statues and stuff around the park, which kind of gives it that like Camp Snoopy feel, where it's kind of static figures, but it's worth something. Definitely adds a little bit more energy. And then the rides that have ceiling extensions are really cool too. Even on Slime Street, like it's a little family coaster and you're going all the way up to the ceiling of the place. So yeah, Nick Universe is cool. Definitely worth going. I'm super glad that I got all the credits in one try. Like, I've heard so many horror stories of going and Shellraiser and Sandy's both being down, and at that point, like, what's even the point? But yeah, I got super lucky with that. Yeah, in terms of my favorites, definitely Sandy's, Shellraiser, Timmy's. Actually, I think I like Timmy's more than Shellraiser, if I'm being honest. But yeah, so that's Nickelodeon Universe. So stay tuned for the next video, and I'm going to talk about my experience at Dorney and my 2 days there.